or commitments. I officiated at a wedding yesterday. Very sweet. There were 7 of us in the house, along with a few more watching on Zoom. It was brief. Everyone wore masks. Most of us actually wore 2 masks. It was perhaps the 4th time in this past year that I've worn my dress shoes for work. I wore my slippers to our Christmas Eve service, for example. My point really is that weddings are special. It is the most common example of a commitment, a vow, a promise that we all understand in our society. Creating a family is about building a series of interconnected commitments with other people. In our first small story, the one about little critter trying to be helpful, we can identify with wanting to keep a promise, a commitment to someone else, but also wanting to have fun and to live in the moment. There may be a multitude of reasons why you might struggle to follow through with a commitment that you've made to another person. This small story offers that our struggle to be true doesn't mean that we don't want to be true. It doesn't mean that we can't keep trying. The second, more common connection for people to the concept of commitment is found in the question, what do you want to do when you grow up? Or among adults at a meet and greet, so what do you do? It is a question of vocation, of career. What do you do? What are your obligations and commitments because of your work? In the big story we just heard, the thief changed careers and became a sower of acorns and of beauty. She was almost tricked into a commitment, surprised by her own willingness to keep the commitment. She made the promise half-heartedly, but when she discovered the depth of what was asked of her, she decided to stick with it. As a thief, she was just struggling to survive, and suddenly she found herself in a commitment that compelled her to do better, to be better, by making the world better. Maybe these stories connect in some way for you. Maybe they do not. Tell me about your commitments. Think of the times you've struggled to keep a commitment, as with our first story. Or a time you've been surprised to find you made a commitment and then chose to keep it, as with our second story. And just to keep things interesting, I'll now share a third story. I attended a clergy workshop focused on commitments and theology and our calling as ministers. The opening activity was a reflection exercise done in pairs. My partner asked me, "Whose are you?" And I would respond. After acknowledging and then taking a breath, they would ask me again, "Whose are you?" And this went on until I ran out of answers. "Whose are you?" I am asked. Whose am I? To whom or what am I committed? To whom or what am I accountable? Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote, "A person will worship something, have no doubt about that. That which dominates our imagination and our thoughts will determine our lives." For me, when I attended that workshop and sat with this question about my commitments, I worked out some answers for myself. I made a list. I find making a list comforting. This may be true for you as well. It may not be. That part is not important. It's the wrestling and acknowledging of your commitments that is important. Here's the thing, though. I had my family on my list, my loved ones, just like with that first story about little Critter and his commitment to do the things that his mother wanted him to do. I have commitments to the people in my life, and that is part of what drives me to do certain things. I also had work on my list, my calling, this congregation, and so on. Back when I made my list, I thought my work was to that this task in this activity, this workshop, was to put everything in a ranked order, which commitments are more important than other commitments. So I made a list of ranked ordered commitments, and I put God at the top of my list, and I put myself second. To whom am I accountable? Whose am I? The top of my list is God. Mostly, this is a theological concession. What else can I do? I have sometimes clarified what this means to me by substituting the word love in place of the word God. Love is my highest commitment. Whatever is the ultimate reality, that's what I'm trying to acknowledge. That's what I am saying holds my highest commitment and loyalty. And then next on my list is myself. Now, at the time, that made perfect sense to me. But over the years, I've struggled to find a better way to articulate this second commitment. I don't mean to say that I'm egotistical or self-absorbed. But there are so many examples of people in our society who are. Greed and narcissism have allowed significant tears in the fabric of our society. Do you know the phrase, "This above all, to thine own self be true"? This is a line not from the Bible or from some sage. It's from a character in Hamlet, written by William Shakespeare. The character saying the line, Paulinus, is a self-serving and ironically pompous character. It's not meant to be actual good advice. And yet, to list myself as one of my own top commitments, I'm trying to talk about keeping true to my own integrity, not about doing whatever my ego wants me to do. I'm talking about taking care of myself so that I can keep all my other obligations that I have made. And maybe, now I think, a list of ranked order of which commitments are most important is less helpful, because these commitments have dynamic interactions. My promises to myself and those to my spouse and these others to my congregation, they all interact. And sometimes one or another is momentarily more important. What I mean is that this is not something that's cut and dry. There is a messy imperfection to life, and I am a messy, imperfect person. Aren't we all? Still, it's worth wrestling with the question, how is it for you? To whom are you accountable? To what are you loyal? What are the commitments that impact your daily living? All of these stories, all of my reflections, this is merely an invitation for you to name and acknowledge for yourself your own lines of commitment and accountability. Where does it fit for you? And tucked into that invitation is an opportunity to make a change if you find it warranted, to struggle, to perhaps to become better, if that is what would help you keep your commitments, the commitments that matter. So come, let us shine what light we have. Let us live in our integrity, and we shall love to the best of our ability. In a world without end, may it be so.